All right, so we will call this the Planning Commission meeting to order. So thank you guys for coming out tonight and attending the August 7th Planning Commission meeting. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll go ahead and have a roll call. So whenever you hear your name, present or not. So we'll start with Commissioner Cheryl Davis.
Present.
Commissioner Jeanette Hardy.
Present.
Commissioner Robin Meyer.
Present.
Commissioner Andres Miller.
Present.
And I am Commissioner Dante Philpott, and I am here. Commissioner Carl Valenzano.
Present.
And Commissioner Venice Walker. She is not here, but we do have enough to make a quorum, so the meeting is official. So we will move to number 3 on the agenda, which is the approval of minutes. So we can go through each one. So we do have 2 meeting minutes that we need to approve. The first one being the June 5th meeting. So I will open it up to any of the PCs here. If you want to review it or have any questions or any additions that need to be made to the minutes that have been sent to us, the floor is open.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we table those minutes. We've not had very much time to review them, and the staff has not had much time to review the comments that they have received.
And would that be for both the June and July meeting minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So then I guess we can entertain a motion to table the approval of the June 5th and the July 16th meeting minutes until all planning commissioners have had the opportunity to review. And do I have a second?
I so move.
All right. We have a second from Commissioner Robin Meyer. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. No nays, the ayes have it. So we will table the June 5th and July 16th minutes, or the approval of the June 5th and July 16th minutes until the next Planning Commission meeting, or hearing, I should say. So we can move on to the next item, which is number 4, any unfinished business. So Mr. Wheeler, any unfinished business?
No, sir.
All right. So with that, we will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is the new business, which is 5A, an ordinance creating Article 5 subdivision under Chapter 8 Buildings and Construction of the City of Mableton Code of Ordinances. So Mr. Wheeler, I will turn it over to you if you have anything that you want to add before we jump in.
No, sir. Just a little brief overview of this ordinance as we discussed at the last meeting. This ordinance was before you previously in the July hearing. However, there have been some considerable changes made to the ordinance per our conversations with the city attorney and then internal staff. So what we brought to you this evening is going to be different from what we presented to you at the last meeting. And Deputy Director Tina Garver is here to provide specifics or answer any specific questions that you may have related to this ordinance.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Director Garver, do you want to do an overview first, like we did last time, and then we'll go into Q&A, recommendations and suggestions, or?
Yes, that will work for me.
Okay.
I have the mic on now.
Okay. All right. So we'll turn it over to you, and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to read through this ordinance. I know it's a lot to look through, and we do appreciate your comments and your feedback. I just wanted to do a quick introduction, really, to introduce the topic, subdivision ordinance, and why is it important. And so the purpose of the subdivision ordinance is to pretty much subdivide property. It's really important in the land development process because the final plat comes in after all the land disturbance is completed. So say you have a raw piece of land that's out there, prime for development, after it gets rezoned, the first step in that process is to have a land disturbance permit. That's when the roads are installed, the stormwater, the lots are laid out, the overall concept is approved. After the land disturbance permit is issued, that's when they go out there and they do all the work. They finish all the horizontal construction. So they're constructing the roads, they're constructing the detention ponds. The final plat is the end of that land disturbance process. The final plat is what gets it establishes those individual lots. It dedicates those roads to the city, in this case, city of Mableton. It also it starts the process for the maintenance period for those roads. After those roads are installed and dedicated to the city, there's a 1-year maintenance period before they're formally accepted. And because that's when those lots are established, that's what allows a builder to start building those individual lots that they will ultimately sell. So that's the main purpose and use of this subdivision ordinance. Just in case you hadn't read the definition, it does say that subdivision means all divisions of a tract or parcel of land into 2 or more lots, building sites, or other divisions for the purpose, whether immediate or future, of sale, legacy, or building development, and includes all division of land involving a new street or a change in existing streets, and includes re-subdivision of land, and where appropriate to the context, relates to the process of subdividing or to the land or area subdivided. There are some exemptions for smaller lot splits and whatnot that are outlined in that ordinance. Some of these will be questions when we get through them. But another big piece of the ordinance, like I had talked about, is that dedication of the road. This is the piece that changed between your first view and the second view of the ordinance, is really in that dedication language. And the reason why we had to take additional time there is because the service delivery strategy that was adopted with Cobb County outlines some of those shared responsibilities and how the roads are dedicated. And the big piece here also is whether or not we're going to accept detention ponds in new subdivisions. In Cobb County, that was common practice where Cobb County accepted new detention ponds and had to maintain them. The city is reviewing how to maintain the city going forward, and in this draft, we are not accepting stormwater detention ponds. There is some language in here that talks about how they have to be platted on an individual lot and they have to be maintained by a homeowners association. And there's also additional language that was added very recently that allows the city, if we have to do some renovations or maintenance on those detention ponds, but then turn back and do some type of assessment back on those homeowners so that the city is not paying for private property. Another issue that this subdivision ordinance will help address are private streets. Private streets are required to be built to the same standards as public streets, and that's discussed here in this ordinance. But there's also some tools to discuss what will happen if a private street is not kept up, and what tools the city can have to notify the property owners that are being served by that private street, and eventually, if we have to, do some of the maintenance, but then do a special assessment back to those homeowners. So those are special tools that are here in this subdivision ordinance, in addition to the typical how do you subdivide a lot and how do you dedicate the property over to the city. And I think from there, I'm fine to answer any questions. I think you have a few, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for that. Excuse me. So I guess at this time, any prepared questions that any of the planning commissioners have, I guess we can pepper with those questions and also suggestions and recommendations. So the floor is open. Everybody jump in.
I noticed, this is Commissioner Hardy, I noticed, and this is in the original version, so I don't know if this has been changed, but it was on page 5 under D, and it says any subdivider or person or combination of both, or their agent, comma, servant, comma, employee, comma, officer, dot, dot, dot. I didn't understand why the word servant was in there.
That's a good question.
Can you state which section or subsection that you're looking at? Because the page from the original version to the updated version that we saw, the page numbers changed.
Is that it? It's section 8.5.12.
Okay, and which subsection or what have you? You said D or
D.
E? D as in David?
Yes, D as
Okay.
in David. It's the first sentence.
Okay.
You know, I actually don't have a good answer for that. This language is pulled from the Cobb County ordinance that's very old. I don't see any reason why we can't remove that.
Okay, thanks.
So I do have a question for you, the first of many. I won't give you a page number, but I'm trying to get the right section, so that way we're all in the same spot. This is immediately following the definitions. After subdivision, the subdivision definition, it immediately follows that, and it looks like there are subsets. So subset number 5, it says, and I'm just going to read a couple sentences, hopefully you know where I am. In those instances where the Board of Zoning Appeals grants a variance for a subdivision of property lacking the minimum public road frontage and an easement is necessary for ingress and egress, there should be a maximum of 3 lots permitted, a minimum of 80,000 square feet, and it goes on from there. So as I read that, the question that I had is just general understanding of that one. And when I read it, it read it as if it's required. The property is required to be an HOA community based on certain. We'll say like the square feet or square footage, I should say. The easement, are these qualifications that make it have to be an HOA community, or no? Did I misinterpret that?
No, that section is questionable. We had another, Ms. Meyer actually raised a similar question, and we've been looking at that language internally, and there is some need to rewrite what that intention is because it's not clear. But what that is getting at is if somebody has a lot and it doesn't meet the minimum frontage requirements on the road, so that means they're trying to create a lot that's not wide enough. It doesn't have enough access to the public road. They're giving the Board of Zoning Appeals the authority to grant a variance. In this language, it's talking about 2 different scenarios, that the lots have to be either 80,000 square feet and have a 25-foot easement, or they need to be 40,000 square feet with a 20-foot easement. But in that case, because now there's a shared easement, it's essentially a private road, that they have to create the covenants to govern who's maintaining that road.
When you say they is who?
The homeowners. So this isn't what you consider your typical homeowners association where they're maintaining your pool and tennis courts. This is 2 or 3 property owners that are sharing a road, and that road now has to have covenants that are recorded talking about who's maintaining that.
Okay.
Now, the intention of that ordinance is, you might want to discuss that, and what you would like to see maybe the Board of Zoning Appeals having the authority to do. Right now, the Board of Zoning Appeals, when they make recommendation, or when they hear variances that are based on lot size or minimum frontage, all of those variances go directly, they make a recommendation, and then the mayor and council make the final decision.
Okay.
So the intention here appears to be that the Board of Zoning Appeals would be able to consider those variances, and I think they would still go to mayor and council for final consideration.
Okay. So by your explanation, you're saying that this is not a typical HOA, and it would be it's a couple subdivided lots. My issue there is because the road becomes private, that's a heavy burden to put on 2, 3, 4, 5 homeowners. Understanding the costs that are incurred because the roads will eventually need repair. Depending on how much road is there. When you're talking about asphalting, labor, so on and so forth, that can be a very expensive endeavor. So thinking about homeowners or future homeowners, that's a heavy financial burden to bear. And I'm not sure of the language that needs to be presented to keep the homeowners in mind, but I think it, in some way, shape, or form, it needs to be adjusted, because thinking about a homeowner or future homeowners, again, that's a heavy financial burden to bear. And it's one thing if it's spread across a neighborhood of 100 people or 200 people, but if it's a community of 3, 5, 8, 10, that's a totally different animal. So I don't have the answer right now, but it's just at least something to bookmark and say, okay, let's review that to make sure that we are not putting present or future homeowners in a financial bind because of this language.
Yep. Just to clarify one thing, if I may. So this is a subdivision or a lot split. Say you have one lot, Say you and your family have a big lot and you and your brother or uncle want to split it up, but it doesn't really fit. Not every lot's now going to have the 50 feet that's allowed. So those few homeowners are coming before the city saying, we really want to build these 2 or 3 houses, even though they're below your standard. So in that case, they have to share a driveway because the way the access is shared.
Okay.
And maybe in some cases, this is getting to the point where that lot doesn't have frontage, and so the only way it can get frontage is with the shared driveway. So really, the homeowners that are getting burdened have put themselves in that position because they're asking for that special permission.
Okay. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, while we're talking about that paragraph, Ms. Garver, I also had a comment about the last sentence in that paragraph that says, in the event that the codes can't be met, Cobb County Fire and Emergency Services may require indemnification in a form approved by the county or city. Could you explain the rationale there?
It is. I don't know that it necessarily even needs to be in the code, but it's calling it out that this is a Cobb County fire call. It's something that they may require. It's not something that the city would require, but if the fire department decided that that was some additional that they wanted to request, it would come directly from the Cobb Fire.
And so this indemnification would be that those property owners would essentially be agreeing that due to the layout of their property, that fire and emergency services may not be able to access it?
That is what it sounds like to an extent. Now, this language is from Cobb County's code, so it is language that Cobb County Fire wants to be included.
But I guess my thinking would be that if the applicable codes can't be met, then the lot split shouldn't be allowed. Because if emergency services can't access a particular property, it certainly is a problem for that property, but it's also a problem for the neighbors. For example, in the case of fire, that one property owner has said, okay, well, I get it, I'm just out. But that fire may spread to his neighbors who didn't agree to that. And so I really hope that sentence gets a lot of scrutiny.
I'm thinking that the alternative, and we can ask Cobb Fire specifically with that, what they may ask is that we don't have the authority to consider those variances. And so that may be something you want to consider, but this gives the city the flexibility should they want to.
If I could, we were talking about frontage a second ago, and I was curious about the language under section 8.5.3.10, I guess it would be, lots. That subsection 1, the last sentence, each lot shall front upon a dedicated public street having a right-of-way of not less than 50 feet. 2 sections later, it speaks about road frontage. So I wanted to make sure I was understanding the first subsection 1 to refer to the right-of-way of the street, meaning the street has to be 50 feet from one right-of-way to the other in a width. It is not referring to the frontage of that lot.
Right, yeah, right-of-way width includes your pavement and then the shoulders up to the sidewalk. So typically it'd be a 50-foot right-of-way is like your 25-foot of road and then those 2 shoulders.
I was concerned we were somehow requiring some sort of frontage requirement. The other thing that in reading that strikes me that because there is the section about private streets, there's no real definition of either private street or public street in the definitions section. So I didn't know if that term needed to be defined in order to be able to use that language in this subsection, because on one hand, we're saying each lot shall front a dedicated public street, but then in a future section, we're saying it's okay to have a lot facing a private street. So I'm I may not be reading it completely or understanding it completely, but it does seem like there's some potential conflict there.
Okay, we can look at that. The way the intention would be is that they have to have frontage on a street, and then there's additional requirements for a private street.
Sure.
But I don't see a definition for those terms, so if that's appropriate to add, we will do that.
And then following that in subsection 3 of that same section, the corner lot has to have 100 feet of road frontage. Again, we're changing terms on each street. Is that really?
What section are you in?
The same subsection, or excuse me, same section lots, 8.5.3.10, just moving down 2 subsections to subsection 3, corner lots, shall have no less than 100 feet of road frontage on each of the facing, I guess, Street A and Street B, we'll call it. Once again, I was getting a little confused myself reading through it between right-of-way and road frontage. And here it clearly says road frontage, but that seems like an exorbitant amount. I'm just trying to make sure we're saying what we mean to say.
Frontage. I will look at that. So I'm sure what that's getting at is you have a corner lot, especially if it's at that entrance to the subdivision. In that case, is that what it's saying? All corner lots, all of them. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking some of that's going to have to do with driveways and where your driveway is located. And since it's a corner of 2 visibilities, then that distance may be what's required to get there. But you're right, in typical fashion, if I was reviewing a subdivision plat, I'm looking at the zoning on the lot frontage. So that does need to be examined.
All right, thank you.
And also in that same section, number 5, I wonder if there's some text left out after the heading. It just says septic tanks and sewage disposal systems, but it doesn't say anything else.
Okay, we can check on that. If it's appropriate, Ms. Meyer, I did receive some revisions directly from her. The majority of them are clerical in nature, that we have no problem going ahead and including repeated words or rephrasing of the definition of crosswalks and some other things. If that's okay with everybody, just know that we'll incorporate those. They're all just mainly clerical type things, just wording, not substance. And then you can point the ones that are substance.
I was going to save you from those.
Okay.
So the next question that I have is, if we go back to 8.5.1.2, so there's A, B, C, D, and then under the subsection of D, number 1, the first question, so when I read this, I was trying to understand, how does the director send notifications? So it's saying, when the director determines that a subdivider or person has failed to comply with or violates any provision of this chapter or any restriction or condition imposed by the authority of this chapter, or violates any restriction or any city authority, the director shall order all work stopped in writing by notifying the subdivider or persons and proper city authority. So how does the director send notifications? Is this snail mail? Is this UPS? Like, how are they notified?
That would fall back to the general enforcement ordinance for the city.
Okay.
Typically, that's in person or service.
Okay.
Like notarized, some kind of verifiable service.
Okay. So that would actually answer a subsequent question that I have. And if we go down to E, in the same section, any person or subdivider severally or jointly aggrieved by any decision of an administrative officer of the city with regard to this chapter may take an appeal. And it goes on to say how many days. It says that such appeal must be filed within 10 days. The question that I had is, could this be changed from 10 to 15 days, or maybe a little bit longer lead time? Because it seems like it's a rushed deal to try to get in front of whoever. And maybe it shouldn't be changed. Maybe that's some other law that I'm not aware of. But I was just asking, like, that just seems like it's a really, really compact time frame.
So you have, You want to go ahead?
You're saying 10 days just to submit the notice of appeal.
This one, it says that such appeal must be filed within 10 days from the date of the decision being appealed. So it sounds like it's saying if it's on, if the appeal is going to be heard on the 15th or whatever, then it has to be filed by the 5th?
Yeah, like if you get a decision on the 1st and you disagree, you have to appeal it by the 11th.
Okay, got it.
And then within 30 days of the 11th, they have to hold a hearing. So they have to hold a hearing on that.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful.
10 days is fairly typical. You could, if you want to squeeze out the 15, give them 15 days to make the notice of appeal. But that's basically, the reason why is because they don't want it languishing, but 10 to 15 is not a big change, but basically 10 days has been determined by court to be reasonable.
Okay.
Like you got a decision, now you have 10 days, which is basically a week, with the weekend and stuff to like make your appeal. So if you want to change it or appeal, you can, and then they got 30 days to set the hearing.
Okay,
So
That
I'm
helps.
on both sides, but you could make it.
that helps. Now, I think it provided a bit more clarity. So that's no argument from me on that one. I wanted to jump to this particular question, section 8.5.1.3, purpose, objective, and intent, number 2. The verbiage and the language I was kind of struggling with. The first interest to consider is that of the subdivision owner or developer. This chapter requires the developer to meet certain standards in designing his subdivision that will provide him with desirable sellable lots. This in turn will give his investors a certain guarantee of return. I'm not sure that should really be there because we're not here to help developers sell lots. That's their job. So this being in an ordinance seems like it's putting the developer first and not the citizens or the citizens of the city of Mableton. And I could be misinterpreting that, but when I read it several times and I was like, this just sounds like the idea is to look out for the developer and not to protect and promote the citizens. But I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, let me know.
I don't generally have a concern with removing it unless there's a reason that we have to state that we are not taking away any our private property rights. So there might be some language in there to say, we're not taking away anybody's property rights. But I think that wording needs to be looked at.
Okay.
And I think there's a sentence, the very last sentence of that section, the last sentence in paragraph number 6 actually references to assure the homeowner protection and the subdivider full consideration of his interests and responsibilities. So maybe there's a way to work with both of those to handle that guarantee of return.
We will review.
All right, so I do have another question. Division 2, it says section 8.5.2.1. Number 1, it has several construction plans. It says that prepare a complete set of construction plans which shall include at a minimum, and it lists A through I. My question is, can we add J to include elevations? Or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Mainly because, again, this is the land development side. So sometimes when those lots are being created, the builder hasn't been fully identified. There is some case law that talks about how you can't have a specific lot tied to a specific builder. Those zoning stipulations will have a general idea of what those elevations will look like, and usually there's language that final elevations are approved later.
Okay.
But I think that's getting ahead.
Okay. So we're before all
This
of
is
that.
horizontal.
Gotcha. And the floor remains open for any PC to ask any other questions or make recommendations or suggestions.
That's it. I think the only questions that I had that maybe could use some discussion is there is language that talks about when you have a private subdivision and there's a road on the backside of the subdivision. So picture any place where you see when you're driving down the road and you have like a buffer and fence and you have backyards facing up to the main road. There's language in this ordinance that talks about how that developer needs to put curb and gutter along that road if it's a public road. It doesn't call it out as a private road because we're not going to be requiring a developer to do public improvements on a private road. And so I think that's why there's a distinction between public and private in that section. There was some concern about whether or not it should be curb and gutter and sidewalks. The code requires that the development put sidewalks and curb and gutter on all these roadways that are adjacent to their development, but we can add sidewalks in that language. I don't think it hurts anything.
That would be great.
Okay. And then the other piece, it's talking about alleys. There's some language in here that talks about alleys shall be provided to the rear of all lots used for business purposes and shall not be provided in residential blocks except for where the subdivider produces evidence satisfactory to the Director of Community Development or his designee of the need for such alleys. Well, I guess there is some language in there. It's saying that typically you would see an alley in a commercial development, but there is language in there that if they could prove that that commercial development's that alley's not needed, there's some flexibility there. So it's not saying that every commercial development needs to have a rear alley. No, that is not what it says. So I guess the question is whether or not you want to require an alley for all commercial developments. Some of that's going to be dictated by the fire marshal, but sometimes you do have a strip mall without an alley in the rear. So we might remove that.
Yes, this really caught my attention. Certainly if you have a strip center, a grocery, like we have on Floyd Road, they have to have something behind them because those are there's a very intense delivery and kind of behind the scenes work that goes on in those businesses. But in less intense lots used for business purposes, say an insurance office or a small coffee shop or something like that, they may have no real need for an activated back door. And yes, and this says alleys shall be provided to the rear. I didn't read it. As I read it, alleys were required for business purposes.
Mm-hmm, you're right.
And then they were prohibited for residential purposes unless there was evidence to the contrary. Mm-hmm. I didn't read that second part of the sentence as applying to the business properties.
You're right, it doesn't. I was hoping it did. But we can, if you want to have that flexibility, unless there's a fire marshal or another safety reason that we have to require it, we can add similar language that allows that to be reconsidered.
Yeah, I think that, it's my understanding that fire marshal pretty much trumps everybody. So certainly if the fire marshal thinks you need an alley, you need an alley. And I guess I would wish for more neutral language related to residential properties because there are some wonderful layouts for residential developments that rely on alleys so that front yards are not so auto related. And this makes, if I were, maybe developers take a look at ordinances and say, oh, I can figure a way around this. But if I don't have that kind of attitude, then the way I read this is, these people don't want alleys. And I would hope that that's not the message that we send.
Yep, no, good point. Any other questions for me?
Yes. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Section 8.5.4.11. This is, where are we? If we go to 8.5.4.11, this is section 8.5.4.11. This is where are we? If we go to, 8.5.4.11, this is section 8.5.4.11. This is where are we? If we go to, 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 where are we? Goodness, I can't keep up with the subsections. Yeah, well, it's a subsection. It's like number 2, but it's after 12B and then 1A, B, C, and then there's 2.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. I'm with you. Keep going.
Did you find it?
I found it, yeah.
Okay. Where did it go? I'm sorry. So yeah, come down even further. So you have 2, then there's 3, and then 3 has subsections A, B, C, D, all the way to F. Subsection D, that all repairs shall commence within 60 days following issuance of the mandate and shall specify a reasonable time in which work shall be completed. Is that a standard period of time, 60 days? Is that too much or too little?
I think it's a fair amount of time.
Okay. And then number 4, it's saying, in addition to requiring the repair of a hazardous private street, the director of the Department of Transportation may order the immediate closing thereof until the repair work has been satisfactorily completed if the director determines that the hazard presents immediate threat to life, limb, health, property safety, and general welfare. Is it possible that we can add as long as it does not prevent ingress or egress? Or is that the general understanding?
No, I mean, that language is pretty strong. So if the Department of Transportation is saying this is immediate threat to life, limb, health, and property safety and general wellness, I cannot talk, welfare, then there may be a reason that access is prevented. I mean, maybe they could park at the end of the street or walk. I haven't seen a road that's in that condition, but if there's a hole in the road and you can't drive over it, then I think that's the intention, that it's unsafe.
So and help me to understand this. Is this speaking with regards to just any particular street, or are we still talking about subdivisions? Because when I read this, immediately I started thinking about subdivisions or communities where you may have one way in, one way out, and if there's something wrong with that particular, the entrance street right there, and they say, hey, we're going to cut it off, then my question becomes, well, how do people that live in that neighborhood, how do they get in and out? Understand this, it's a hazard, but they got to go home and go to work. They got to be able to get in and out.
I will check to see if there's any clarifying language we can add, but it would be treated the same as a public road. If it's completely unsafe, then we're going to have to figure out a way around it. But generally, we can close one lane, you can drive around it, or maybe you could park here. I mean, it's not common to have to completely close a road, but it would be that same level of we're protecting the public.
Okay. That was my worry there. Is that when it comes to
keep in mind, you are in the subsection section, which of those prefixes we need to use, dealing specifically with private streets. So I think we're trying to give the city who's enforcing this ordinance a way to handle situations that arise on private streets where they may not normally have the authority. We're giving them the authority through the Department of Transportation to say, hey, we're closing this.
Right.
So you're not dealing with your typical subdivision. So
the reason I ask that is because if you take a neighborhood
couple steps down,
and if they have a gated entrance, then that means the streets in the neighborhood are private. And so I'm thinking about citizens in that situation where it could be something that happens where it's like, yeah, we got to shut this down, but it's a community and it's a gated community and the streets are private. So how do they get in and out? You got to go home, you got to go to work or to the grocery store or to the doctor's appointment or whatever. So that's why I was wondering if, as long as it does not prevent ingress or egress, but I'm going to rely on Department of Transportation to make sure that ingress and egress is not prevented like wholly. Maybe they let you drive up on the grass. I don't know.
If I could, a little history on this section of Cobb Code. It was enacted after a community in Mableton had, with private roads, but without a functioning HOA, had their private road deteriorate to the point that it was unsafe, and people could barely get to their homes. I don't know how that particular situation was resolved, but shortly thereafter, this code section was introduced and adopted.
Okay.
Because I think the county discovered that they didn't have any tools to safeguard the safety of those residents who didn't have the tools to fix the road themselves. They should have had, but they didn't have. And so this code section got adopted.
Right. And I think about there's an ongoing situation right now with a particular street within Mableton city limits, Premier Lane, where the street is private and citizens are asking like, hey, how do we get this fixed? And the response has been, hey, this is a private street. And typically on a private street or private road, the HOA assumes responsibility. But there's a lot of gray area with regards to the HOA and how to get it fixed and who does what. And so that's why I'm trying to make sure that when we have this ordinance before us, that we make sure that at least that's one part that we can say, hey, let's make sure that if this situation does arise, that people are not prevented from getting in and out. So any other questions from any other PC members? So Mr. Wheeler, point of order, question, do we want to do a public section for anyone to speak in favor of or against any particular part of the ordinance? I think we did it in the previous meeting, so I wanted to make sure.
Yes, sir. It is a public hearing, so you can open it up for public comments and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. And did you have any other questions before we go to public comments? Okay. Any other PCs again? Okay. And then I'll make a motion to open this up for public comments. So if anyone is here that would like to speak in favor of or against any particular part of the ordinances that you have either read or heard, please step up to the podium, state your name, and go have at it from there. And then we will allot 10 minutes total for you to speak with regards to any portion or portions of the ordinance. And that can be shared amongst however many people, or one person can take all 10 minutes. It's totally up to you. So we will open it up. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, we don't appear to have any public comments. So I will make a motion to close the public comment section. As there are no public comments to be heard, can I get a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second from Commissioner Meyer. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. No nays, the ayes have it. Public comment section is closed. Do we have any other questions with regards, or comments or suggestions, recommendations with regards to the ordinance that's been presented?
Can I ask a question? I haven't seen it anywhere in here, and I could be missing it. I've seen in a few developments, subdivisions, where they do separate the lots, but for some reason, either money ran out and they don't finish the subdivision, or they finish the subdivision and they left maybe a lot or two undone. Is there a requirement to leave that vacant lot in a certain way? Because I'm aware of, there is one place that when it rains, it floods the entrance because the water is running off the way they left it graded. And there's another lot that I'm aware of in another subdivision that it's just, I don't know. Should there be something in there that says you need to leave it aesthetically, I don't know, that doesn't harm the subdivision in any way?
So that would fall more into the land disturbance permit code rather than the subdivision ordinance, because this is actually the grading of the property that you're referring to. The grade of the property, the way the water's flowing, that should be addressed by that land disturbance permit. And they should have developed it per that plan. And if they didn't develop it per that plan and they didn't properly stabilize the property at the end of the project, then that might be a code issue. The aesthetics, though, aside from maybe if there were street trees, that would be something that would be required. But the rest of it, really, the code is more, it can't be runoff. You can't have dirt going into the street, more of the appearance. In some cases, I fought that battle during the recession, the fighting of the vacant lots. In some cases, letting them go back to natural is, in my opinion, better than constantly trying to keep somebody mowing that property or planting it, or even worse, letting it grow for like 2 years and then starting all the way back where you're getting into the weeds instead of the trees. There may be language in the code that talks about, like there is for sure, site clearance, so that you can't have the trees all the way up to the road if it's blocking visibility. But that would belong more in the land disturbance side than this one. And we can look at some solutions on that, and especially if you have specific lots, we can reach out. Those would still be covered by the county's land disturbance process to see if there's anything we can do to get those cleaned up. I lived next to one for a long time.
We all clear? All right. Well, if there are no further questions, concerns, suggestions, recommendation, then I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting this evening. Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right, we do have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, the ayes have it. We will consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you guys for coming out this evening. Thank you for your participation. The city thanks you. The residents thank you. So until next time, until we meet again.